I want to thank the leadership of COREN for this opportunity to speak to a subject that is close to my heart, the role of strategic engineering alliances and the expansion of engineering regulation monitoring in strengthening engineering compliance in Nigeria. As both an engineer and a public servant, I stand here today wearing two hats, one technical, the other political, and both deeply invested in seeing our profession thrive, not just in theory, but in practice, and not just in pockets of excellence, but right across the nation. Next slide, please. I want us to begin by grounding ourselves in reality. Engineering does not happen in isolation. Every road constructed, every bridge raised, every piece of public infrastructure is embedded in a complex web of regulations, approvals, funding decisions, and political will. What we face today is not simply a technical challenge. It is a structural, collaborative, and political one. And that makes compliance, real enforceable compliance, both a professional and a governance imperative. The idea that engineering will regulate itself does not reflect the reality on ground. If compliance is to succeed, it must be shared between regulators and ministries, between engineers and public officers, between political leaders and the professional bodies that advise them. Our job today is therefore to make that shared responsibility work in practice. What is ERM? It is COREN's most practical expression of enforcement, a boots-on-the-ground initiative that bridges the gap between policy and performance. ERM ensures that only those registered, qualified, and professionally accountable are allowed to practice engineering, particularly in the delivery of public infrastructure. And this is not backed by wishful thinking, it is backed by law. Sections 19 and 20 of the 2018 COREN Act amendment establish the ERM framework as a legal mandate. This gives us teeth, the legal authority to inspect, question, intervene, and if possible, if necessary, to sanction. But even more importantly, ERM represents public trust, because when we monitor project sites or inspect factory installations, we are not doing it for ourselves. We are doing it to ensure that engineering is safe, credible, and in the service of society. It is our duty to ensure that engineering remains a profession that protects lives and does not endanger them. Next slide. Today, COREN's regulatory mandate stretches across no fewer than 11 major sectors of the Nigerian economy, from power to oil and gas, from aviation to biomedical engineering. We are seeing an explosion in the application of engineering, but that expansion also demands a wider regulatory footprint. Let me give you an example from my own state. In the past 6 years that we have been in office, we've seen tremendous growth in the industrial sector, in the telecommunications sector, agro-processing plants, and also residential development. All of these rely on engineering input, yet I cannot beat my chest to say all of them are adequately monitored. That's the challenge. As engineering expands, so must our regulatory and enforcement mechanisms, or we risk losing control of quality and safety in sectors that depend on it. Next. Please take a look at this slide. Accidents everywhere. This is a painful but necessary slide. We've all seen these pictures. Collapsed buildings, failed roads, industrial fires, bridges that give way too soon, people losing their lives in tragedies that are avoidable. These are not just accidents. They are, at the bottom of it, failures of oversight, the consequences of gaps in regulation and failures in enforcement. We must stop blaming only the contractor or the developer. We must look inwards at the systems that allowed these failures to happen. As professionals, we must be honest enough to say compliance is not a suggestion, it is a life-saving obligation, and every time we ignore it, we put lives at risk. But let us also be honest and talk to ourselves about why enforcement struggles. We are dealing with fragmented enforcement structures, bureaucratic red tape, regulatory overlap, limited understanding among private sector operators, and in many cases, a lack of prioritization by subnational governments. Many state ERM committees, where they even exist, are underfunded, unsupported, or simply unknown. And this is not always due to resistance. Sometimes it is because no one has made the case clearly to decision makers. That is where advocacy and political engineering must come in. We must speak the language of politicians and budget makers. We must make the case that regulation is not an obstacle to development, it is a pillar of sustainable growth. Now we have to talk about strategic alliances as a national imperative. This work cannot be done alone by COREN. We need strategic alliances, formal partnership with sister agencies like NAFDAC, NERC, SON, NCC, NIMASA, and others to ensure a joined-up regulatory system. You imagine a world where data is shared across regulators, where joint inspections eliminate duplication, where standards are harmonized, where enforcement is faster, stronger, and smarter because we are working as one team. This is not a dream. This is what strategic alliances can deliver. If we move beyond ad hoc meetings to structured institutional partnerships. Next. State ERM committees are the engine room of compliance. COREN may provide the strategy, but state ERM committees are the engine room of compliance. They understand local context, they know which sites are active, they know the contractors, the shortcuts, the warning signs. They serve as COREN's eyes and ears in the field. In Ogun State, we have found that the success of regulation rests on how functional and empowered these committees can be. And we want to call on all other state governments to look at this and work together with COREN to make sure that we can put this in place. They should not be viewed as administrative boxes to tick, but as vital mechanisms of safety, quality assurance, and accountability. Now I speak as a deputy governor and I talk to my colleagues in government and say we must take ownership of engineering compliance. This means that we must allocate budget lines for ERM support, make sure that our states sign executive orders or laws that formalize this enforcement. We must sensitize MDAs to recognize and support COREN's work and ensure that every engineering project undergoes proper regulatory scrutiny. If we are serious about infrastructure, we must also be serious about regulating it. As I speak to my fellow engineers in political and public office, we must become advocates for the profession, not just practitioners of it. Please let us use our voices, let us use our influence to get enforcement through. We must mentor younger engineers to think beyond design, to think in terms of governance, ethics, and compliance. We cannot afford to be silent. Our silence is permission, and our inaction is complicity. Now is the time for us to move from aspiration to action. We need to formalize every alliance, institutionalize every partnership, activate every state ERM committee, integrate compliance into every project and every budget. Let us ensure that engineering regulation is not personality driven, or budget dependent, but embedded, permanent, and irreversible. Because our profession must stand not only the brilliance of our design, but on the integrity of our systems. Let engineering compliance become a marker of governance quality in Nigeria. Together, let us build a Nigeria where engineering compliance is not seen as optional. It is expected, it is enforced, and it is respected. Let it become part of our culture, embedded in how we think, how we work, and how we build. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, fellow engineers, thank you for your time, for your attention, and your commitment to this vital cause. Thank you, and have pleasant deliberations.